Welcome to the Pharos Fit podcast, where we help you to explore your capacity to move better, push further, and achieve your limitless potential through fitness, nutrition, recovery, and lifestyle. Hey guys, welcome back to the Pharos Fit podcast, and welcome back to the lodge. Back with Brandon today. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing pretty good. Doing better, but it's good to be in the lodge, man. Love coming up here.
You're our most regular guest.
I know it's a good thing or bad thing.
Every time Brandon comes here, he thinks he's just coming to the podcast, and I rope him into like an hour and a half of real work outside, building stuff, trying to get this place up and running.
That's secretly why I come up here, to get some extra work and get some extra exercise.
But it's fun stuff, right? It's all.
I grew up on this. I had an immigrant family. We didn't let other people do work. It was the children, other family members came over and did the work. So I'm used to it. I enjoy it secretly.
I start these things thinking I can do it all myself, and then I get 3/4 of the way through it, and I'm like, "Fuck! I need help. I'm gonna kill myself."
So we talked about it. You got to call the guy.
Gotta call the guy. I've almost died 3 times today already. So guys, today I want to talk about cutting. Once in a while, people are going to want to do a cut. There may be a number of reasons for this. Obviously, in the competitive sense, people may be cutting for a show. If they're a competing bodybuilder or a person in the sport of figure, then they may want to cut for a show. They may be cutting weight for a fight or any kind of event that has a weight limit. They may be cutting for that. It may be something as simple as I want to get cut for beach season so that I look good on the beach. It may be a wedding. It may just be an event. It could really be anything, any kind of time when you really want to lean out as much as possible, and kind of look your best. This isn't something, obviously, you can do all the time, and you can't constantly be super cut all the time. There are exceptions. With some people, just genetically, if they're ectomorphs by nature, and they constantly operate at a low body fat percentage, which genetically some people can, it seems like they're always cut. And you walk around asking yourself, how do they stay so cut all the time? They must eat just perfectly and do everything just perfectly. It's just genetics. Unfortunately,
Guilty.
Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. I know a number of people like this. They always look ripped. And they will be honest with me and say, I don't eat perfectly. I'm not great with my diet. This is just the way that I am. It's just just what God has given me. As frustrating as that may be to hear, that is just the way that is. And actually, it shouldn't be frustrating. It should be a relief, because nobody is behaving perfectly all of the time. I guarantee it. But there are times when, like you may want to trim out, you may want to lean out for some kind of event like we're talking about. And I just wanted to go over, how it can be done, some of the protocols that are involved, and some options that are available to you when you do want to do a cut. The name suggests a cut, that you are going to cut something out of your routine. But we can also think of it as adding something in. So it can be cutting or it can be adding, because it's really a balance of calories in, calories out. We're also trying to metabolize some fat, and we're trying to reduce our overall consumption of energy, or at the end of the day, our balance of energy in, energy out should be in the negative. So we should be burning more calories than we're consuming. Obviously, this can be done by consuming less energy, consuming less fuel, or it can be done by burning more calories, using more energy. So it can be cutting, or it can be adding, or it can be obviously a measure of both. So in the way that I program, in the couple of main programs I'm running right now, the Jim Jones Movie Prep 1 and the Build at Pharos, both are going to come into somewhat of a cutting phase in the next couple of weeks. I start with the workouts themselves. Now, when you're trying to burn more calories, when you're trying to lose more, fat, we're less concerned about adding mass. We're less concerned about building huge amounts of muscle. The workouts do change slightly. And we are going to do more kind of what I call power endurance work, so more higher intensity interval type training. There is going to be more cardiovascular work in there, so more work that requires fat as fuel. And there is going to be more work at lower intensities. So we're not trying to lift maybe as heavy as we were, but there will be an increase in overall volume. Of course, this, like we were saying, burns a lot of energy, burns a lot of calories, and that enables us to help us get into that deficit that we're talking about. Adding in the lower intensity cardiovascular work will help us burn some extra fat to be used as fuel, because your body favors fat as fuel when it operates at a lower heart rate. And, you know, hormonally, the reason we do leave lifting in there and we don't just do like a bunch of cardio and stop lifting entirely is because obviously we want to hold on to as much lean muscle tissue as we can, because we don't want our metabolism to slow down. Remember, if you lose muscle, you lose metabolism. Your metabolism will slow down if you lose muscle. So obviously we don't want to lose muscle, so we want to hold on to that muscle. So we are going to continue lifting. Hormonally as well, obviously we want to keep our testosterone high and our growth hormone high, so we want to keep lifting throughout the cut. We don't want to cut it out. So our workouts need to be a good, healthy balance of these three things, of these kind of this lifting, this higher intensity cardiovascular type work, this power endurance type work, and the lower intensity aerobic cardiovascular work, or the fat burning work. A lot of people will argue between hit and list, which is better for you. Do I want to operate at low intensity steady state cardio, or do I want to favor high intensity cardio? Well, both will work. In my experience, a combination of both is the most effective. There's only so much power endurance. There's only so much higher intensity work you can do, especially if you're in a calorie deficit. Otherwise, you'll just burn out. But the lower intensity work, you can tolerate more of. It puts less of a stress on the system, and like I said, it favors fat as fuel, and most of us have a good amount of fat on the body that we can metabolize to be used as fuel. So by combining those three main things over the course of your cut, I find that to be the most effective. Now, people will say, well, what's best? The answer is always, it depends. That's true of both working out and of nutrition. We'll talk about nutrition a lot in a second. But this will be different for everybody. We are all different people. We all react differently to different stimulus. We all react differently to different foods. When it comes to working out, some people respond really, really well to a lot of lower intensity cardio. They'll cut really, really well that way. Some people respond really well to a higher intensity cardio. So maybe you add more of that in. Some people get cut just by doing exactly what they were doing, but just by changing their diet. I've seen it a bunch. I have a couple of my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. They're both competing bodybuilders. Their workouts don't change that much. They will add cardio in, more cardio in, but the main change is diet. Probably 80% of the change leading up to an event will be just on diet. So I think it's easy to get carried away with what's the magic kind of workout, what's the magic kind of cycle that's going to get me in the best shape of my life. What's the 300 workout? What's the Henry Cavill Man of Steel cutting fat? Like, there's all these different cutting.
What did Hugh Jackman do to get ready for Wolverine?
Yeah, all of these different
clickbait
things.
article. There's the secret. We got it. Just click it.
There's a men's health workout. This is the workout that got Hugh Jackman in shape. That's out there somewhere. None of it is true. It's all bullshit. Most of it is diet, and often a few other things as well. But that's for another podcast. So let's talk about diet, because this is such a huge factor, and I want to break down different options in diet, different examples of diet, and different things that can work. Like I said, a lot of the time, some things will work well for some people, and some things will work well for other people, and there's no kind of like right or wrong. It's just what works for you. So broadly speaking, when you're doing a cut and when you're trying to get as lean as possible, you are going to have to reduce calories somehow. Okay. And there are different strategies for doing this. firstly, we can just count our calories. It's as simple as that. We can use a logging system, or we can strategize our day, know exactly how many calories are in every meal that we eat, and by the end of the day, we know when we calculate how much calorie we've expended, or the workout that we've done, versus how many calories we've consumed, we know we are in a calorie deficit, because there's no way we've consumed enough calories to have put us in more calories than we've burnt. Now, this often means very boring food. If you look at a competing like bodybuilder's diet leading up to a show, the food will be very bland and very repetitive.
Boiled chicken, steamed vegetables.
Exactly. Some
else?
white rice.
White rice,
yeah. Very lean cuts of steak, perhaps. Some will, some won't.
Maybe salmon.
Egg whites.
Maybe too fatty right there, the salmon, but probably depends.
Usually sort of like a white fish, like a lean white fish. Maybe some broccoli. But it's going to be, like I said, very bland, very repetitive, low calorie, high protein type foods. People will, when you have something like that, and we'll talk about protein in a second, but we always want to keep our protein high because we never want to lose muscle. So whether we're cutting or whether we're bulking, we're always going to try and get at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. No matter what we do, that will always stay the same. So your protein calories always have to stay high. So the one thing we want to make sure of is when we do a cut, we don't want to suddenly wipe out our protein intake, because nobody wants to lose muscle. That is not the goal. Keep the protein content high, maintain the muscle. So the caloric deficit has to come from carbs and fats, right? Because if I'm keeping the protein the same, my only other two options are carbs and fats, and alcohol, obviously. Alcohol is the other one, which hopefully goes without saying you were going to want to cut out. Although I enjoyed Matthew McConaughey's. Did you read his book?
Heard great things though.
So when he was cutting for
Dallas Buyers
Club, he was on a huge caloric deficit, like taking in very few calories a day, but he would always have a glass of wine no matter what throughout the cut. That was built into his calories. I enjoyed that. But for the most of us, alcohol will be one of the first things to go, and then we'll really focus on the carbs and the fats. Some people will just cut carbs. Some people will just cut fats. Some people will cut carbs and fats. Professional bodybuilder will cut both carbs and fats. Obviously, when you're trying to get as lean as you possibly can, so to compete, when you're really in that kind of like sub 7% body fat, those carbs and fats are going to be very low, to a point that's unhealthy. People say, well, why can't you just be lean all the time? Well, because it's unhealthy to be that lean all the time. Your metabolism will slow down long term if you continue to operate in that fashion with such a restriction on fats and carbs, because that's where you get energy from. And if you haven't got any energy, your body will start down regulating metabolism and start eating its own muscle for fuel. No one wants to be in that situation long term. So, these are often, short-term strategies for an extreme result. So, I don't know whether you've been following The Rock for his preparation for Black Adam. He's been talking about it a lot, for his main scenes, his main shirtless scenes. Obviously, he's been very, very strict with diet.
Black Adam, which movie is this?
That's his Black Adam DC movie that's coming out, I don't know, next year, whenever it is. Okay. Where he plays like Black Adam, the black superhero. So he's got himself in the best shape of his life, without doubt. He's been documenting it on Instagram. It's been a fairly interesting journey. And as he's gotten deeper into the role and closer to those shirtless scenes, the diet's gotten stricter and stricter and stricter. And obviously you get to a point where you're in a huge amount of restriction, huge caloric restriction, huge carb restriction, huge fat restriction, really focusing on those lean proteins, minimizing basically everything else, dehydrating, cutting out sodium, all of those things, so you look for a few days the best you can possibly look, but you can't maintain it long term. So, it's a strategy for extreme results, but then you have to start like refueling, rehydrating, and re-upping your salts. So when we think about what we're talking about today, you know, bear in mind we're talking about like short-term strategies here. This isn't something long-term, but obviously there are varying degrees of this. You know, the bodybuilding example or the Rock example, it's an extreme example. The Rock's getting paid millions of dollars to do that. Bodybuilders, it's their career to do that, so they're willing to go to those extremes, are willing to take those risks. You know, few of us are going to want to go to those extremes.
It's almost like we're paying for their discipline to see like how disciplined they can be to put their bodies and their spirits through.
But the principles are the same, as in I have to be disciplined enough to cut something out or to add something in or to be more careful. Yes, I may not want the extremes of what they're doing, but the principles are the same. I have to be willing to change something in order to get a new result. If I want to look a way that I've never looked before, it's the classic quote, right? If you want to do something you've never done, you have to be prepared to. If you want to look a way that you've never looked, you have to be able to do something you've never done before, or you have to be willing to do something you've never done before. So, you know, unfortunately, this does take a lot of hard work and a lot of discipline and a lot of restriction, and often, you know, what's the best way to put this? Somewhat of a short temper sometimes when you can get grouchy, obviously, when you're in a caloric deficit. You can get grouchy when you're in a carb deficit. We tend to have a short fuse and sometimes take it out on people when we shouldn't.
When you're low on sugar at all. If you're on
Right. Well, and especially because so many people are so addicted to sugar. As soon as you start restricting it, it's a huge problem. You know, you start going into withdrawal, and with that withdrawal comes some horrible side effects.
Like any drug, right?
Yeah, but it, you know, the more you cycle yourself off sugar, definitely the easier it gets over time. But no matter what you do when you're in this kind of restriction, you know, it's gonna get harder psychologically. And you know, like I said, you definitely have a shorter fuse. So we know we have to be in a deficit of some kind. We know, you know, calorically we have to be in a deficit. We know that deficit's going to come not from proteins, but from carbs and fats. Some ways to do this, like we said, it may just be as simple as cutting your calories and strategizing your meals through the day, so you know exactly how many calories you're having, and you know that is going to put you in a deficit. And it may be very bland meals throughout the day. One thing to bear in mind, and I know that a lot of bodybuilders will go down this route, is that in order to keep your protein synthesis from food becomes very important. So they will try and take in protein every 3 hours. So, you know, although you're not eating a lot of calories, you're eating frequently. You're eating protein frequently so that you don't lose muscle, so that you continue to metabolize protein throughout the day. Okay, so you don't waste away, so to speak. So although your calories are low, your meals are frequent. It's just that every meal is low in calories.
Question, because a lot of people when they diet, and I hear this about like say regular people, where there's like, I need to have a snack every 3, 4, 5 hours instead of eating one big thing. They eat like that. Is that anything correlated? Because I don't know if these people are actually going to be eating protein in each and every form.
Yeah, I think there's a difference. I think eating protein regularly because you're consciously trying to not lose muscle is very different from addiction. A lot of people are eating frequently because they're addicted to sugar or they're addicted to caffeine, and they're just trying to get a constant pick-me-up because they're in that cycle of like
up and down, high and low,
drop, sugar boost, drop. So that they're eating for that reason. So that's a very different consciousness, I think.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It's just because most people are like, well, I want to cut down to here. I don't want to eat one big time throughout the day. But
yeah, you know. I mean, and again, that works for some people. Like I do think for some people it is better to eat more frequently. I think smaller meals more frequently work out better than like huge meals throughout the day. But that leads us on to our next kind of strategy, which is intermittent fasting, which is a method which a lot of people favor these days. It does work. I've used it multiple times on multiple people, and it's definitely worked. And I don't think it's a magical thing. I just think it's a good way to minimize calories because when you have a restricted window in which you can eat, there are only so many calories in which you can consume. And I do think your stomach benefits from the rest. I do think you appreciate the taste of food better. I think you metabolize food better. I think your body responds to food better when you do deprive it of food for a while. And I think sometimes people's energy levels are better when they intermittent fast, because what we were just talking about with the spikes and trough, spike, trough, spike, trough, you don't get that with intermittent fasting. You kind of have a more steady metabolism throughout the day. And then once you do come to eat, you're so ready for those calories, your body just absorbs them, and they tend to go where they're meant to go as opposed to being stored as fat.
I think people forget that the body is like almost like a machine. And if we can like kind of program it and get it on a consistent basis, just to know like, hey, at 4 o'clock, we start eating until midnight. And even if it's that 8-hour window, the body's going to work better because like you said, it's consistent. It knows when it's getting energy, it knows when it's dying off. It knows when it's saying between these 16-hour windows of you not eating, you're either sleeping, you're doing something else, that it knows what to do with the food. It knows where to store it, knows where to keep you balanced. I think that one in particular is a really good one for people to like learn the discipline of getting on a system. Yeah,
I think so. And then the 16-8 is a fairly common strategy for the intermittent fasting. So you only have an 8-hour window in the day in which to eat, and you've done the 16-8, so you know it's hard to overeat when you only have 8 hours. You think, 8 hours, that's a long time. You're just not that hungry. Once you have that first meal, it's hard to get hungry again. So it's easy to put yourself in a deficit when you're intermittent fasting. The kind of joke I always say, and it's not really a joke, it's kind of, I find it to be true, it's intermittent fasting only works intermittently. If you do it all the time, your body kind of adapts to it and it's no longer, a shock. So you don't get the same benefit as if you do it like periodically throughout the year. That said, I know some people who do like intermittent fast all of the time and it does work for them to a degree. I just find that for me, like I said, intermittent fasting works best intermittently. I don't do it all the time. I do it sometimes, and I find it works best if I just do it sometimes.
It's very popular in the keto community.
Yeah.
And people are going to go very low carb. Intermittent fasting is one of their ways to get started.
Yeah.
Ways to start training their body.
Well, the other one that's popular right now, and it's a form of intermittent fasting, is the OMAD. You have you heard about this?
No, what's this
Mark
one?
Bell's been doing it recently. It's 1 meal a day, just the 1 meal a day diet. Mm-hmm. So it's basically saying there is likely an evening meal, which I'm going to consume a fuck ton. I'm going to consume as much food as possible in this 1 meal a day from good sources, and then I'm not going to eat again until that meal the next day. Now that may seem crazy to some people. I don't think it is that crazy actually. If you've ever read The Warrior Diet, which is Ori Hofmeckler's original text, which is the first real like intermittent fasting book that I read. It draws on the example of, as hunter-gatherers, we would go out on the hunt all day. We would maybe forage on a few berries or whatever we could find throughout the day. We would try and kill something. We would bring that kill home, and then in the evening we would all sit down and have a big meal. So essentially, you were just having one big meal a day, and maybe foraging on a few berries and whatever you could find throughout the day. So I think in terms of the way that we evolved, we definitely did not evolve to eat small, frequent, healthy meals that are perfectly counted macronutriently throughout the day. There's no fucking way that was ever possible when we were evolving through time. We can do that now because we have food readily available to us conveniently. We have food companies that will deliver our perfect meals to our door. Our day's not
worried about chasing the calories we need to survive.
Right.
They're there for us whenever we need them.
Right. Exactly. So I don't think it is that crazy. I don't think it is that wild. And I do think it's effective. If you've seen Mark Bell, he's in great shape and it's definitely working for him. So yeah, that's another, great strategy. With all this stuff, I will also say that I find stuff like intermittent fasting and OMAD tends to work better on guys than it does on women. Just because women's bodies are a little bit more complicated than men's.
Their endocrine systems work a little bit more sensitive.
A little bit more complicated. So yeah, if you are listening to this and you're female, just be aware. I tend to recommend this more for men than I do for women, just because women's bodies are a little bit more complicated. Another strategy is carb backloading. Carb backloading was very popular probably, I want to say 10, 15 years ago. It's exactly as it sounds. You're putting your carb content towards the end of the day. You're backloading your carbs. So let's say when you're doing your cut, you're only allowed 100 grams of carbs a day. You're going to not consume any carbs all through the day, and then you're going to backload at the end of the day. So you're going to consume those carbs in the evening. Kind of the reverse of what we usually talk about, Brandon, where I'm gonna time my carbs around my workout, and then I'm going to consume fats and protein in the evening. Well, this way you're not consuming any carbs throughout the day, and you're going to backload them and then consume them in the evening. It does work. I've seen it work. Like I said, it was very popular 10, 15 years ago. It got great results for some people, and it may well work for you. Again, I think this helps with sometimes the consumption of carbs throughout the day can put us in that cycle we were talking about, that kind of like spike, trough, spike, trough, spike, trough. After you eat a lot of carbs, you can get tired, right? After that initial spike, you can get that big lull, which is why with the carb backloading, you get that lull right before you go to bed. It's like, fuck, I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed. Problem solved.
I get it. I love my sausage and pasta still.
There you
Italian
go.
chef it up. But
Whereas
yeah, you feel it. You're just like,
yeah, you
have a glass of red wine with it too. Yeah, you're done.
Exactly. Well, the problem is during the day, it's like, oh my God, I need some energy from somewhere. I can't sleep. I'm at work or I've got things to do. So then you look for another pick-me-up. Whereas in the evening, like I said, you take in those carbs, you get tired, you get lethargic, you go to bed. So in terms of that strategy, that carb backloading can be helpful. Carb cycling. This is a strategy that we've been using on the Jim Jones movie prep. We've been doing that throughout this cycle, actually. Things are going to tighten up as we cut. But with the carb cycling method, you're going to cycle those carbs throughout the week. Some days will be high days, some days will be medium days, some days will be low days. On the higher days, I tend to favor like leg days for the higher days, because that's the day when I'm going to be burning the most calories. Those are those workouts that are going to be the most metabolically demanding on leg day. So that's when I'm going to go slightly higher in carbs. So let's say, for example, I might consume 2 grams of carb per pound of body weight on those days. On my medium days, let's say it's an upper body day, I'm going to consume maybe 1.5 grams of carbs per pound of body weight. And then on my rest and recovery days, I'm going to consume maybe 0.5 grams of carbs per pound of body weight on my low days. I'm going to cycle those throughout the week. Maybe I have 2 high days, 3 medium days, 2 low days throughout the week. That way, I'm cycling my carbs. I'm regulating my carbs in that manner, so that by the end of the week, I've consumed lower carbs than I normally would, but I haven't been so restricted that I've got myself burnt out. And I fuel those hardest days. I've given them the respect they deserve, and allowed my body to take in the carbs that they need to grow on those days. Obviously, when we're doing a cut, like I said, we may want to think about reducing those carbs further, because I'm no longer so concerned with gaining mass or building muscle. I'm trying to maintain muscle, not necessarily build more muscle. So I may want to down-regulate those carbs further. You could still operate in this carb cycling manner. It would just be that the net weekly carbs would go down. Therefore, your daily cycle amount would go down. So all of those different days would now be restricted further to a lower number. But carb cycling, it's a great way to down-regulate your carbs and thus down-regulate your calories.
That's an interesting one to try. I like that one right there.
Yeah, it's super effective, and it helps with people who are like, I can't possibly do this long term without some. I gotta have my fucking donut. If I'm Italian, I gotta have my pasta. Right, there's a point where I gotta have it.
I still love get a nice sourdough bread, butter up, toasted, just to have it with eggs in the morning.
Yeah.
Some avocado. It's great.
I gotta have my fix. So this way it allows you to kind of have that fix and just, build it into your weekly strategy. Okay, last one I want to draw on here is the kind of, if it fits my macros kind of diet. So sometimes it's as simple as I will give someone their macros. It will be, maybe 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, maybe 1 gram of fat per kilogram of body weight, and then if I'm doing a cut, maybe 0.5 grams of carbs per pound of body weight. I will give them that target and just say, as long as you hit that target by the end of the day, we're all good. Now, I think traditionally, the if it fits my macros method got a bad name because it's like, well, fuck, I can eat whatever I want as long as it hits my macros, so I can eat fucking donuts and ice cream and all this stuff as long as it fits my macros. Obviously, there are other issues involved with that. We're better off sticking, obviously, to our natural foods, our foods that exist in nature, that are not chemically treated, that our bodies recognize, that can metabolize easily. We've talked about this a lot before. It's not just what you eat, it's what you can metabolize that counts. If you're just eating a bunch of stuff that your body can't metabolize or can't use, the likelihood is it will be stored as fat and not used as fuel. And obviously in this case, we want to be using the food that we eat. We want that food to be readily available and easily metabolized so that we can use it for the tasks that we want to complete. So if it fits my macros, obviously I would recommend these kinds of foods because they are going to be, a lot more beneficial to you. Although maybe this method to a degree does give you a little bit more flexibility because it's not so strict on timing or, I need to eat this now, I need to eat this then. It's kind of like, as long as you hit the numbers by the end of the day, you're all good. How
flexible are you within those numbers? I mean, because I know some people, especially me, I'm a very black and white guy. Like, I got to go 40, 40, 20. I got to go 70, 20, 10 if I'm keto.
I think within 10% is good. Obviously, the closer you can get to it, the better the results are going to be.
But most people are going to be like, oh, I didn't hit it. The stress comes in. I'm not going to show up at the gym anymore.
You definitely don't want to get yourself stressed out by it because that will lead to more cortisol, which will lead to more storing of fat. But I think, as long as you stick within 10% of the target, you're going to be kind of okay. But with anything, like the more serious you take it and the closer you get to your numbers, the better the results are going to be. And the less likely you are to just push the fuck it button.
But also it's a sliding scale. It's a sliding scale. So if you're at these numbers and you add, I need some more fat, it's going to move and push each one up and down. Right.
And it's also that thing psychologically of like, as soon as people make a mistake or don't do what they try to do, it's like, oh, fuck it, I'm not going to bother. This doesn't work. Whereas if you're like, okay, like you said, like, today I went a little bit over, tomorrow I'll go a little bit under, and I'll balance it out that way, and I'll just be, sensible with it and strategize it. So that's another great way of doing it. And again, that can work for some people. If you don't want maybe you're super busy and you can't time your food out as well as you might like to. This gives you, like I said, a degree of flexibility, and you'll still be within your numbers, and everything will kind of like pan out by the end of the day and by the end of the week and by the end of the month. So another great strategy to use. So there's just some ideas for you there, guys. You've got intermittent fasting. You've got the OMAD diet, which we mentioned. You've got your balanced meals throughout the day. You know how many calories in each meal, and you're just counting calories. You've got your carb backloading. You've got your carb cycling, and you've got your if it fits my macros. All of these strategies will work. Which is best? It depends. Some will work better for some people. Some will work better for others. And it really is, a lot of this is just experimenting with our own bodies and seeing how well we respond and seeing what works for us. There is no perfect diet. There is no, right thing for everybody. Different things work better for different people. And again, like I said with working out, it's kind of the same thing. We mentioned Joe P last week, Joe P's recent transformation. What did he do differently? Well, A, he changed his diet. He was very strict with his overall calories and his macros. But B, he stuck to his same workout he'd been doing. So he stuck to the build program. He just added steady state cardio in the morning, fasted, and he went for a walk in the afternoon, a 30 to 60 minute walk in the afternoon. This is a great strategy. Again, it's cutting, but it's adding. He didn't necessarily cut a ton of stuff out. He simply added stuff in. He added that morning fasted cardio. Some days he'd just do a 3K. Some days he'd do a 5K. And then he added in that walking in the afternoon. Now, he's the kind of person that always works out, no matter what. So he's been doing build every day for the last 6 months, let's say. So he can't expect to just keep doing that and change, because his body's used to that. He needs to add something new in. He needs to create a new stimulus. He created that new stimulus with a steady state cardio in the morning and the walk in the afternoon. So he added something to his routine to create a bigger deficit and increase his fat metabolism daily. Those two things worked perfectly for him. And that's all he had to do. Other people will, change their workout more. Like I said, some people will add in more high intensity cardio. They'll do maybe more cross training or more CrossFit type workouts. But like I said, for Joe P, just adding in that steady state cardio and those walks in the afternoon works wonders for him. So that was a great strategy for his body type, for the way that his body works. I always talk about running, and because if you think about fighters have been using running to cut weight since fighting began. It's like, I've got a fight coming up. I need to add in my when you close your eyes and picture a fighter preparing for a fight. He's in one of those sweatsuits and he's going for a long run, pounding the streets. Floyd
Mayweather, 5 in the morning,
4
just
a.m.,
running,
5 a.m. in the morning.
Car following him.
Exactly. Because it works. Nothing helps the body lose weight like running. Often people will bash running because, for the joints, hard on the knees, hard on the hips, hard on the ankles.
How bad can it be? I mean,
but like I said, I don't think there's anything better when it comes to cutting weight than running, and adding in running to your routine may be of great benefit to you. Some people find, as their energy levels get lower and lower, as their caloric intake gets lower and lower, they may switch that running out for walking on the treadmill, walking uphill in the treadmill, or getting on the cross trainer, or that kind of thing, simply because it's easier. It's easier to do. You can still mimic the same kind of benefits without the same demand that running brings. But for a lot of us, when we are trying to do just a general cut, adding in some running can be really beneficial. So, kind of summing this up, we talked about cutting versus adding. Some people can just cut stuff out. So maybe we cut out some calories, maybe we cut out some carbs, maybe we cut out some fats. We always want to keep that protein high. We always want to keep that 1 gram of fat per pound of body weight. 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. We want to keep that in, but we want to cut some stuff out in order to put us in that deficit. Another way to create a deficit is to add stuff in. We talked about Joe P. Maybe he added the running in, he added the walking in. Maybe you guys are going to add some more high intensity cardiovascular work in, maybe some more cross training, maybe some more CrossFit type workouts to boost that metabolism further, to shock the body into something new, to create that new stress, to burn those extra calories, to put us in that deficit. Some people do a combination of both. I'm going to cut calories, carbs, fats, and I'm going to add some stuff in. So it's that combination of cutting and adding. And I'm going to strategize with one of the strategies that I mentioned to help me create that deficit. Because at the end of the day, it's energy in versus energy out. I have to be in a deficit if I want to lose weight. I have to be in a deficit if I want to lose fat. I want to be smart with it. Like I said, you cannot be in a deficit your whole life. Your metabolism will downregulate. You will find it very, very hard to lose fat at all. In fact, your body will start holding on to fat, maybe gaining fat because your body goes into like starvation mode. And it's like, oh my God, this person is just not feeding me enough. I need to hold on to this fat to survive. So don't think of this as a long-term strategy. I read some good stuff recently by Mike O'Hearn talking about, people that do a lot of cardio year round with their workouts really struggle to lose weight for a cut because what do you want to do? You're already doing a bunch of cardio. You're already working out every day. You're already really strict with your calories. Where are you going to go from there? You gotta think of this as, I'm going to really work on my metabolism throughout the year and really work on building a healthy metabolism as much as possible, because this whole thing is about healthy metabolism. And then periodically throughout the year, I can strategize these cuts. But I can't think about always cutting all year, because I will end up fucking my metabolism. I will end up storing fat, and I'll put myself in a really bad situation moving forward. So when you do things like that, think of it as a short-term strategy for a specific result and a specific time frame that I'm then gonna recover from and then work my way back out of, because I want to focus on building back that healthy metabolism.
And there's plenty of other episodes where we've talked with other people, like you said, your in-laws, Ty, we've had him on talking about the different diets.
Yeah.
And as a fellow former athlete, like, it's experimentation, like you said, finding out what works best for you, because what's going to work best? Well, it depends. Like you said, if we start the episode, you got to experiment a little bit. You got to figure out what works best for you, because only you are going to know in the end of the day.
Exactly. And even you can have the best coach in the world, but it takes a little bit of understanding of your body. And, I think we're living in a dangerous time when, you can go on Instagram any given day and see like the perfect body. You don't know what this person is taking. You don't know what this person is doing. Unfortunately, well, not even unfortunately, because I don't even think of it as a bad thing, because, if somebody wants to use, drugs or whatever they're using to
surgery, whatever
it is to look that they want to look, that's up to them. Have at it. That's their body. But I think we can't compare ourselves to others, and we can't expect, to get the same result as other people, because we are different. Our bodies are different. And, they may say that the danger with it is that they may say they're getting that result from doing one thing, when in truth, the reason they look the way that they look is because of other things or other factors involved. Like they may be using certain drugs to get that lean. Maybe doing certain surgeries to look a certain way. And that isn't clear when you look at a photo on Instagram or, a video on Instagram or whatever it may be. So bear that in mind. Like not everything you see is real. There are things happening that you don't know about. So don't compare yourself to others. Find what works for you. Like I said, all of these strategies have their pros and their cons, and they all can be very beneficial. It does take you really like finding out for yourself, not being completely reliant on other people, and stop letting people tell you what to do. It's great to get advice. It's great to learn from other people. Be open-minded, but be willing to make your own notes. Use yourself as your own guinea pig. Find out what works for you, and move forward positively with like, okay, that didn't work for me, but maybe I can try this. I found that this worked for a period of time, but then it stopped working. I found that I did this and it was effective, but I felt like shit and I never want to do it again. These are the things that you go through. Like I said, there is no perfect solution. There is no perfect diet. There is no perfect method. There is only what's right for you at that time. Because this is the other thing. Like at different times in your life, different things may work. And that's just the way it is.
Didn't understand that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But congratulations. This is episode 50 right here.
Episode 50.
This is episode 50 right here.
God.
Right? Where's the time gone?
What a time to be alive. Okay, guys, that wraps it up for today. I hope that was helpful for some of you. Like I said, we are coming up to a cut on the Jim Jones movie prep program. If you want to follow that program, you can go to jimjones.com and jump on. All the workouts are on Train Heroic. It's super easy to follow, super helpful. It's a very effective program. People are getting great results on it. If you're a member at Pharos Athletic Club, obviously you can come to Blvd. I'm going to put some guidelines on this nutrition stuff in the notes for our next cycle. We are coming up to a new cycle soon, so I'll put this in the notes for you guys. But yeah, it's fun to do this every now and again. It's fun to like really put a stricter eye on the nutrition, and like I said, kind of experiment a little bit and see what happens to our bodies when we do change certain things. So yeah, I'm here to help you guys, and I will help you as much as I can. Like I said, obviously this is different for everybody, but there are some broad guidelines we can draw upon to help us, and then from there we can kind of tweak our own methods and our own strategies. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the episode, guys, and I look forward to catching you soon. We are now fully open at Pharos Athletic Club, 1316 Glendale Blvd. We would love to see you, so come by and see us soon. Thanks for coming in, Brandon. Thanks for taking the time to come up to the lodge.
No problem.
It's great to have you here as always. Okay, thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. Take care.